start building affordable housing, use some of those offices to put people into housing. And then we'll go on from there. And I think that's how the average person in the street is probably looking at things right now.
You know, your problems you have in the United Kingdom are very similar to the problems we have in the United States. Same thing. Same thing with homelessness, people living on the streets. And it's a problem I think that every nation has to deal with. That's the reality we have to deal with, how we get people into job position. It's really based on the job market. If you don't have jobs that people can afford living, there's no place to afford a house. So it always boils down to that. But that also segues us into another area that you're strong in, that's in real estate. Let's give me some feedback on what you're doing in the real estate market and how you're helping people in that area.
Right, so my role, what I do at the moment is I set up a company called Affluent Asset Analytics, and what I do is I help high net worth individuals and fund managers, asset managers to invest their funds within stock markets wisely. And I look at growth areas. So I'm looking at three main areas: commercial real estate, we call them. So I look at retail outlets, I look at industrial warehouses, and I look at offices, main things. Not quite started looking at hotels. So these are the three main areas that I look at. And I look for rental growth in those areas, and I look at yields. One of the areas, without giving too much away, is we're finding that the industrial warehouses are quite an attractive proposition at the moment all around the world. And that's a lot of it is because when you go into the high streets and you look at the high street shopping areas, they're gone because people are now a lot more online. And one of the places that people are looking to raise and to look at for industrial warehouse units, etc., are in places like maybe Lithuania, maybe Slovakia, places like that. The Eastern Europeans, where it's not so expensive, they can store a lot of goods there, they make a lot of goods from there, and they ship those out not sort of quite cheaply. Those are the sort of things I'm looking at. So I produce econometric forecasts for these individuals to be able to invest their funds into these kind of areas and diversify their portfolios. So if somebody's looking at real estate offices, for example, offices in Norway, just for example, might not be as attractive as offices in Switzerland, for example. There will be economic reasons for that. There'll be there'll be lots of economic reasons with, I don't know whether they're looking to sort of urbanize or whether people are just not taking office spaces anymore. I research into all those things, and I help people diversify their portfolio based on all these things. The other areas that I'm looking at are the green areas. This is really important now. The whole world has now got themselves into the green space, environmental issues, sustainability, and that type of thing. This is now the growing area, and I'm doing a really big sort of project on that, whereby I'm ensuring that I'm looking for areas around the world where the green spaces are now becoming more attractive. So people might be looking at whether it's residential or commercial, maybe offices in, I don't just off the top of my head, Luxembourg might be going a lot more green. So that's going to have sort of growth over the next sort of 10, 15, 20 years. And I do a lot of the calculations, I do all the maths for it to ascertain sort of yield income and sort of the yield income that people might get from their investments in a particular sort of portfolio. And I look at the rental growth in those over the sort of 5-year period, 10-year period. Someone might come to me and say, hey, what do you think about 3 years sort of, industrial warehouse and portfolio with Norwegian offices? What do you think about that? Can you do me a bit of a scenario on that? So I'll go away, I'll do the maths. I'll come back and I'll present it to them and say, this is what I think. These are my rental growth forecasts. These are my yield forecasts. And I'll have a full explanation as to why I think what's going to happen is going to happen. So those are the main areas that I'm concentrating on. One final area that I'm looking at is that I actually get, looking at sort of family offices, I actually look at getting people to invest in areas where there are large developments. For example, I have on my books at the moment, obviously not going to say the name, but there's a company that is investors, a family office, investing in a huge area around London, and they're looking for fundraisers. So looking for something to raise funds to be able to put into this particular investment and yield a lot of returns over the next however many years. So I get these people together, I get the developers together, and I get the sort of the raise fundraisers and developers together, and I put them together, and obviously we have that sort of harmonious relationship. So I am sort of like a middle person between them. But I also advise. I don't advise. I provide the economic forecast and the research behind what I think is going to be happening in the next 5 or 10 years in that particular real estate area. I look at the regeneration projects. I look at urbanization. I look at migration. I look at people coming into the area. I look at people going out of the area. I look to see what economic growth is going to be. I look at technological changes over those sort of particular areas, and I would sort of get people one-on-one. We'll talk, and I'll provide these things for them, and they generally, hopefully, will go away quite happy. So that's sort of three particular areas that I concentrate on.
Two areas I want to talk a little off the cuff, and I know that it's either in Dubai or Saudi Arabia, where they are buying fertilizer from India to change the desert into green spaces.
Yes.
Tell me, what's your feedback now? And what's going to happen is like they're going to change the topography of those countries because of the fact that the desert is no longer just going to be a wasteland. It's going to be a place where they can build a whole new part of that country. What is your feedback on that?
Well, absolutely, because these are one of the sort of growing areas. Dubai is a place that's obviously, as you know, very attractive. Sort of 40 years ago, it was just pure desert land. It was built on, and the way it looks now is absolutely brilliant. But the green areas, the green spaces, is where people are generally looking to put their funds in. That's a really big, the really big projects, and green is good. Now we have to get towards net zero by 2050 in the United Kingdom. Countries around the world are looking at that, and Dubai is one of these massive, huge spaces where lots of people are now flocking to, and it's one of those places where it's now becoming very, very, very investable. So I'm kind of all for that. This huge spaces where you know massive companies are going in. Still a lot of work that a lot of building work that was supposed to have been done that hasn't been done. Obviously, COVID sort of slowed those processes down, but now people are starting to go back, and as you say, they're sort of building on green, a lot of sort of greenery around those areas, and it's becoming really huge. Also, the newer markets, Mexico, for example, South Africa is that's another area. Singapore, Malaysia, these are now bigger sort of areas where people are starting to think about emerging markets and growing sort of real estate in those areas, and the green sort of section of those real estate areas. So those are big projects that are happening, and I'm all for it.
The opportunity to build property there, but also to grow new foods, you know, yes, farming and so forth. So it's like they're building a whole new type of ecology.
Absolutely. And that's where sort of exactly, and that's one of the attractive things about those areas, that they are sort of having their own farming projects out there as well. So that's really good for people to very sort of attractive for people to go in there and you know, hedge their bets and put themselves, you know, raise funds and go sort of, you know, help the building projects over there. It's fantastic.
I want to ask you this now: how do people reach out to you? Who are the kind of people that are looking for you, and how do they reach out to you?
Yes, well, generally they're family offices. Family offices are, you know, they have a lot of real estate. They look for real estate, new projects, new markets, etc. I have a website, Affluent Asset Analytics. Info at affluentassetanalytics.com. I'm there. We have a website there. It's just completing a rebuild, because we put a lot of other stuff in there. So they can reach out to me on there. Perfectly, I'm very, very happy to get people out and have sort of one-on-one discussions with them about these things, how they can invest their funds, etc. But I think one thing they really need to remember with me is that I don't advise. I provide the research for them to make their own decisions. That's really important to know. But yeah, that's how people can reach out to me.
That's excellent to know. My other thing is that I want to share a little bit of your success story. Tell us some things you're very successful. I think the public wants to know that. And before you answer that question here, I want to ask you another thing. You're in the United Kingdom, but your services are also beneficial to people in the United States or other parts of the world. Can you share that with our audience here?
Correct, yes. I live in the United Kingdom, but I'm completely global. So people who are sort of developers, brokers, fund managers, asset managers, whether they're traders in real estate, whether they're ordinary investors, or whether they're high net worth individuals or family offices, my services are here. I provide the services to be able to let people make their own decisions and make wise decisions. And I think one of the things that I've learned myself is that I taught myself. I'm quite self-taught. When I did my PhD, one of the things I found that was quite frustrating was that I needed to do something called econometrics, which is the mathematical side of statistics. So without doing that, you can't graduate. You just can't do anything. Very frustrating because my supervisor had two supervisors who didn't really know very much about econometrics. In fact, barely knew how to spell it. So I had to I went to them and said, look, how can I sort of, can you sit down and teach me this? This was their job. And they said, well, we can't really do this because I don't know how to do this. They sort of did their PhDs when sort of the abacus was a thing. But so I went out and I set my goal and said, I am going to study how to do the mathematical and statistical side of things. It took me about 3 months to learn almost every rule about econometrics, about how to get data in, metadata, how to comparable data, all these things. There's so many rules, making sure the variables are the same, whether they're first difference or data. Anyway, I won't go into technical stuff, but I'm very self-taught. And I find that when you teach yourself things, you will never forget it. You will never forget. So that's one of my sort of fortes, or one of my success stories, is that I actually taught myself my, how to do the mathematical side of things. And sort of my forecasting now is my forte. I love it. I do it. And one thing I always do is I look at my forecast and see how, sort of 3 or 4 years hence, to see how accurate they were. And they're very accurate. I'm quite happy to say that they're quite accurate. So not the easiest thing to do that. So that's one of my success stories. And at the end of my PhD, I had a viva. So the viva is the sort of, it's the little exam. So it can be a half an hour, it could be a 7-hour exam at the end of a PhD. And my examiner was a guy who had anything that he didn't know could be written at the back of a postage stamp. He's that good. He's written so many books and so many articles about anything to do with the European economics, which was my major. And he examined me over 2.5 hours and he grilled me. I thought it was just people told me, oh, your viva is only going to be a celebration of your work. And they will ask you, what was this variable employment? Why did you use that, etc. It wasn't that at all. He literally nailed in, page 35, line 12, you have this figure, 0.35 GDP versus deficit or whatever. How did you get that? It literally was an absolute grilling on very, very, very specifics of, my PhD, how it sort of revolves around the real world, how it makes, how did it make sense at the time? And so he would go back to the mid-80s, and I was thinking, my goodness me, mid-80s, I have to remember what happened then, but at the end of the viva, it was very good. I passed with flying colors. I didn't know that he had actually examined Oxford and Cambridge PhDs before. I think if I'd known that, I would have asked the change examiner beforehand. But anyway, I passed with flying colors, and sort of we went around the school. Oh, yeah, Victor's passed his PhD and he's did really well. It's one of the best that's ever been done here and all that. That's one of the success stories. So I took that as to sort of saying to myself, you know what, going to this big world, you know what you're doing. And that's why I became a consultant. Because then off the cuff, I was just able to advise people or just, help people along the way, making their wise decisions, forecasting, whatever it was. And so that was how I got into it. That was really good. So very, very pleased about that. And here I am still going strong.
I think too, when a person goes into business for themselves, you put more of your heart and soul in what you're doing. I worked with the investment industry all of my life. And I can tell you, I had my own business in the early part of my career, then worked for an investment firm the bulk of my career. And now I'm back at the other end of my career. I'm back on my own. And I will tell you the difference. I put a lot of my heart and soul in what I do. I'm not there to compete with anybody else on getting numbers. I give my clients the very best advice. And because I do family office, there are a team of people that help make that decision. There's no one person. So the client gets the most objective decision of all. I really like talking to you. And I'm hoping that we can introduce you to other people here in the US as well as a part of Europe.
Absolutely, that'd be great.
That's the whole purpose of our show. We went from 6,000 views to 25,000 views in 30 days.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's quite a number. Yeah.
Well, I had help on learning how to reposition how we put ourselves in, our videos are positioned and how we market them. But I really like having different types of speakers on. I don't know if you had a chance to look at our show, to see some of our videos, but I look for quality people like you. I certainly appreciate talking to you today.